wake up with the sun and struggle through the day. In every passing moment, watch your lifetime slip away.
Yeah. These days has got me hot. Introducing me to Anderson .Paak is one of the best things you've ever done.
Oh yeah, that guy. Do you know anything about him, like outside?
No, have you done any research? on him?
Well, I watched a short clip in CBS Sunday Morning. You know the old dude. Oh, they did a whole Anderson .Paak on CBS, and so I was like, I got to see what CBS had to say about this guy. And I guess he went by like Breezy McSwag.
You told me about this.
And had this whole different persona. And he said he spent the first 30 years of his life, I guess, trying to be what he thought everybody was wanting.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, when I went back to Anderson .Paak, came with the birth of his son.
Right.
So he had a kid, got that perspective that being a parent will provide.
Right.
And then he went to Anderson .Paak, which is, given name. And then that's when things changed for him, when he like accepted more or less what he was versus what he was trying to be or for other people. And
I get that.
Yeah, and then that's how it all began. And started working with Dre all of a sudden, and that's where everything took
Really?
off. Yeah, Dre is responsible for Anderson .Paak.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be a shocker.
No, not at all. That's what
That's
Dr.
what he
Dre
does. That's what he does.
That's exactly what
he
does.
digs up gold and polishes that stuff and makes it better.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, for anybody who hasn't listened to Anderson .Paak, go YouTube Tiny Desk concerts.
The NPR Tiny Desk, yes.
And look up Anderson .Paak, P-A-A-K, Anderson .Paak, and the Free Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
He's really, he's the chillest guy ever.
Yeah. The energy.
So understand something. Like if you listen to Anderson .Paak on the radio, I think, if you've never heard him before and you just didn't know who he was, if you listen to him on the radio, if you're like me at least, I'm kind of into a lot of different kinds of music, but maybe not as eclectic as you.
Okay.
I might not have loved his music. Maybe I would have. I'm not sure. But when you see the video of this dude, right? So he plays the drums and sings and presumably writes a ton of the music, although obviously not all of it, which I think makes his band that much more attractive.
Oh, yeah.
But he is this amazingly energetic, positive, smiley little black guy that plays the drums and sings. And he's just remarkable. He's got this spirit about him that just makes you want to smile. And I send that to people. I send that to my friends ever since you've shown it to me. I send it to people and I'm like, hey, if you're having a bad day, just watch this. And it just makes you smile. And anytime I'm having a bad day, I play Anderson .Paak and it just makes me happy.
Oh, it's my life hype song. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm about to do. I'm just like, all right, let me throw this song on, and then I'll get in the rhythm. And before that first track ends, I'm like, I'm swaggering about. It gives off this really cool energy vibe.
Music is funny that way. You know what I mean? Music is sort of a source. It's like it's an emotional stimulus that goes right past your mood in a lot of situations and just affects you at a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
It can change your mood, without you even having to analyze it or anything else. So to listen to someone that positive, and especially if you can watch the damn video and see him smiling ear to ear,
the
he's
whole
time, and he's so talented. He raps, he sings, and he's playing drums in these crazy funkadelic songs.
Yeah, I was always impressed with Don Henley of the Eagles because that's one of the most notable drummers who sings well.
I'll be honest, I don't know that I realized he played drums.
Yeah, Don Henley's the drummer of the Eagles, and he's also the lead
singer.
singer.
Joe Walsh, the guitar player.
Joe Walsh, guitar player. The head guy. Forgive me.
Don Henley, Joe Walsh, and hold on.
The lead singer.
Why are we so bad at this?
There's 3 lead singers. Well, because there's been like 11 members of the Eagles, man.
That's too much.
Joe Walsh actually wasn't an original member. Well, they were notably one of the most feuding bands ever. Just dramatic. But anyways.
But the Beach Boys were like that too.
Don Henley was the drummer and the singer, but if you listen to a whole lot of Eagles songs, rock drums, boom, ch, doom, ch. This guy, when he's drumming, is doing a full-on beat. Mm-hmm. A high-tempo beat that is completely off with what he's now not singing necessarily, but rapping.
Right.
And it is literally playing 2 instruments wonderfully at the same time.
Yeah, it's like Robert Johnson on the guitar.
It's absolutely insane.
Or I really do. I see him like a Jimi Hendrix. That's really
Very
how
much so.
I see him in that sort of spirit. Like he's got that. He's a genius. I mean, he's just a full blown genius. And this is one of the interesting sort of byproducts, I think, or the components of the spiral that we talk about, in life, of this spiral of awakening, is that when you start to wake up, your third eye, and you're able to create art, then you start creating art, and it makes you more awake. You start to sense more and see more perspective as an artistic person. And then the more awake you are, the more art you create, and the better you get at it. So the more awake you become. And it's just like this self-perpetuating spiral of doing this. And you see someone like Anderson .Paak or Jimi Hendrix, and they're able to create things that are, like you say, they can sing one thing and play a whole different rhythm over it, whether it's drums or guitar or whatever. And the genius it takes to do that necessitates, it demands that person must obviously have a very different kind of brain. And I think that's interesting, because I think that we're sort of in a place where we need more people with these weird perspectives.
Well, that's noted. That's fact. Think about any famous genius in the music world. They were always, in a way, out there. They thought differently than the normal. Like, I mean, I guess you could say like Johnny Cash to some degree was kind of an every guy. But most famous musicians are not everyday. You don't relate to them like, I bet we do the same thing on Tuesday.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're a different breed. And I wonder if there's any literature or anything on like what that is, if anybody's put any thought behind.
Well, this is the type of thing that I'm so interested in, and what I'm working on building my, my sort of personality analysis models together, is looking at, and this, you've had to listen to a lot of me rambling about this, but analyzing, if a person's got a good sense of humor, it typically means they're more sexual, especially in females, right? Like that's just two character components that I see almost everywhere to be correlated in some way.
Yeah.
Right? There also seems to be a correlate there between sense of humor and a broader understanding of things. Sort of you find a lot more of your salespeople, male and female, a lot more of your sort of customer service people, the people who are people have a better sense of humor. They usually have a more eclectic music taste. True. They usually have a more of an appreciation for art in some form or another. People with a sense of humor are more likely, I would think, to listen to music driving down the road, or be interested in breaking down movies or looking at paintings or just beautiful things. And you think of people who have less of an eclectic taste, who are a little more cold physically and affectionately and all that stuff. These are all correlated personality traits. And so I think that you can look at how musical someone is and how well they're able to break down different kinds of music and put weird, crazy stuff together that no one else could. And just from a neuroscience standpoint and a behavioral psychology standpoint, I think it's interesting to look at those and build character models.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think there's more than about 25 or so character models of the whole human race. Like you can pretty much, everybody's different and got their own nuance and stuff, but I think we all fall into about one of 25 different character models. And once you learn to navigate those, you can start looking at the nuance beyond that and how to identify them quicker. And then you can, once you understand that model, you can actually start to understand some pre-configured bridges of understanding that you can create between yourself and those types of people. You go, okay, I've done enough of the assessment here. I think you're probably sort of this model of person. You're probably coming from somewhere like this. Maybe if we're having a disagreement, if I want to get to know you, now I can understand how to build, where I'm building this bridge of understanding to. So that's a lot of the models I've put together on character analysis, or from looking at people like these great artists and stuff.
And I find we do it with, especially musicians, a bridge of understanding, because the musician's trying to convey emotion with his music. They want you to connect to their song, right? And the good ones put themselves into it. So I guess those people are good at making the bridge to you. It's whether or not you respond to it. You know what I mean? Because they're making something that they're trying to connect and resonate. That's what the audience is ultimately there for.
And they're basically casting a big net. They're casting a big net, and I think that's when you start creating music, and you and I have had this conversation. When you start creating music, you kind of have to push past this barrier of, no one's going to get this, no one wants to hear this, no one's going to understand this, because if the thoughts are in your head, and this just goes back to sort of the idea that we only fit into one of about 25 or so different character models. I'm just pulling that number out of nowhere. It could be 30, it could be 20, but it's a fairly small amount when we think about the complexity of 7 billion people. We think of ourselves as being pretty complex, but I don't think we're nuanced, right? Because you can keep getting more and more focused on our emotional state, and say, well, he's a pretty nice guy, he's pretty patient, but within that patience, sort of character department, He's patient with work situations. He's patient with life goals, but he's not very patient with his friends, and he's not very patient with these types of situations. So it's sort of a fractal system that you can keep looking at it closer and closer and closer, and it gets more and more detailed. But by and large, people fit into about one of 20 or so different categories. And artists throw this big wide net out there. They're like, hey, I'm going to put out a song, and maybe 1 million people buy that record. But think about it. 1 million people out of 330 million in the U.S. or 7 billion on the planet. It's a pretty small group. Just goes to show you can pretty much attempt just about anything, and you're going to capture the attention or gain the admiration of somebody if you put your heart into it.
Yeah. I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's about conveying a message. It doesn't matter what media. We're talking music. It could be a movie. It could be a book. It could be you could be a writer, and you're trying to convey a message. You know what I mean? Bridge a gap to whomever is willing to, because I think we all can find something. I mean, I'm sure me and Hitler had something that we had in common in some strange way.
Sure.
And he, is a polar opposite of a person you wouldn't want to.
You guys both like dogs. You both like dogs.
Exactly.
I know that's true.
So
JC confesses to being Hitler on live podcast radio.
The point.
And on that note, we're going to take a break. Be right back, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we are back. And we were talking about JC being like Hitler and having something in common with everybody.
Sorry about that.
So that was completely inappropriate and entirely too soon. But aside from that, we're going to switch gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about this YouTube channel called Spirit Science. I'm going to give these guys a big plug here. I don't know them. I've never met Jordan, the guy that does the channel. I've never talked to him or anything.
That would be something, I imagine.
He's God. So here's the thing. So I got to throw this out there first. That I always talk sort of defensively about everything I bring up. So I'm so used to watching people get beat over the head. Usually it's me. For talking about anything controversial or anything woo-woo or pseudoscientific or whatever. So here's the thing. In my view, like if you understand empirical science, like Francis Bacon, sort of the progenitor of the scientific method, said like this is how we need to do science. We do this, 5-step process, and it's got to be empirically, physically provable and repeatable and all this. And that's such a beautiful thing, and there's no question about like the contributions of the scientific method to science. But the problem is that there are some things that we have to acknowledge. That there are some things that are not really physical and they're not really objective, that really matter in the world, right? Like your state of happiness is not scientifically measurable.
No.
It's just not. But it matters, right? If our happiness doesn't matter, then what the hell does anything being true even matter, right? So truth, in my view, needs to be understood in its relation to human happiness, right? So I've got a book on the bookshelf right over here that I used to read with my kids. It's by Richard Dawkins called The Magic of Reality. And if anybody's never read that book, I mean, you should. It's a good book. But it's called The Magic of Reality, How We Know What's Really True. And then it's Richard Dawkins in all his glory, super left brain scientist, empirical materialism is everything. There is no life after death. He's positive of this. Can't imagine what scientific evidence he has to back that up. But he definitely preaches that there is no life after death. And that's fine. He's a big hero, was a big hero of mine for most of my life. But what the guy Jordan over at Spirit Science does is he says, look, I'm not going to tell you this is true, right? But give it a listen with an open mind. See if it makes any sense to you. See if there's anything about it that resonates with you. And if it does, then just go look into it yourself and see where it takes you. And then he gets into a lot of spiritual woo-woo stuff. And then he ties in some modern science too. And you don't beat him up over each point. You look at the big picture and see how it's going.
Yeah, he moves quick, and then he tells you, if you want to know more about this, and then he'll give you a recommendation if you want to take a deeper dive, and he provides that. But what he's doing is for somebody like me, who's a lot of spirit science for me was like the first time hearing about a lot of this information, and it just it's a little bit overwhelming at times. You're taking in all this information, but it's cool that throughout, he's like, all right, here's how you learn more, and then I can go get on my computer and then dive into more of that stuff. But the way that they just like bring you up to speed really fast and articulate in the way they do in the animation is fantastic. I think that for me, the way I learn, if it was just audio, I don't know if it would hit me as much as the brilliant.
The animation is unreal.
Yeah.
The animation is unreal. And the little nuances, you pointed out to me, if you see the videos, and he's got this little animated Thoth character. Well, he's got Patch, I guess, is the guy.
Yeah.
It's not Thoth. Yeah, I'm thinking of one of his videos in particular. But he's got this little character that sort of narrates. He's like this little patchwork character. Looks like the guy from Little Big World.
Yeah, kind of.
But he's like all blue or green or something. Blue. I think he's blue. But his name is Patch, I guess. And he speaks from behind this podium when he's narrating, for parts of it. And he's got like a flower of life, like sacred geometry on the front of the podium. And I hadn't noticed this, and you told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
But
you'll see it every time.
It started, oh, sure. Now I'll notice it. And if you've ever watched it and not noticed, but if you understand sacred geometry, reality starts with a circle, and then it moves to a Vesica Pisces, like two overlapping circles, like in a Venn diagram. And then it goes to like a triad from there. And then it spreads out into this flower of life. But what JC was telling me is that incrementally through the episode, as they progress through the storytelling process and they progress through the events or whatever.
I imagine each episode has a meaning to it, and as I don't know as much about each specific symbol, when you watch it, knowing more about it, I think they change it pertaining onto the subject matter. Because sometimes he's like, all right, here we're going to go on a deep dive. And then it might be like really elaborate.
Right.
And all of these circles combine to make this really intricate detail. But at the beginning of the episode, it might just be, a few circles or just a circle.
He's so detailed. So the guy that makes this, his name is Jordan. I don't know anything else about him. But man, what an interesting character. This guy's got, He's on several different levels at once, and they're all above my head. But he's got a beautiful mind and a beautiful heart. He seems like somebody who I've seen a lot of people attacking him online. Saw it,
Yeah.
You can imagine scientific types that are like, this is bullshit. Guys dedicating all their time to like spirit science sucks. It's like, at what point do you just say like, this guy's trying to do good and he's making a difference in people's lives and he's making people happier? And people like Richard Dawkins would say, well, I don't care. It's like, if it's not true, it's not true.
Yeah.
But it's like, if it's not true, but it's making everybody happy and it's not doing anyone any harm, like, isn't this a net positive thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was getting attacked. And I think that's where, back to bring the wagons full circle to the Francis Bacon thing, taking the empiricism, as the only line of evidence that matters. The material evidence and taking all the immaterial out of things seems to me that to fly in the face of the great philosophers of the past, even the ones that we don't even argue about, like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and even Newton not being really a philosopher as much, but these guys, he was into alchemy, he was into astrology, and we just kind of throw all this stuff out. And I think all that spirit science really is trying to do is get people to realize that if the greatest minds that we still quote today, the greatest minds of the past, were talking about, esoteric things and occult teachings and astrology and alchemy, maybe they're worth the investigation, And maybe if the astrology thing and the spirituality thing, the chakra alignment and all that stuff, maybe if it's helping hundreds of millions of people around the globe, maybe there's something to it. You know what I mean?
But that's immeasurable. You were talking about you don't know how he knows that there is no life after death. I feel like a lot of scientists, because they can't prove there is, that's enough proof that there isn't.
Yeah, they need proof, which I get, right? But in the absence of proof, I'll take evidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'll take evidence, and the evidence that spiritual energy or metaphysical energy exists and is worth measuring and is worth taking note of, and that it's possible to measure, and that's really what my work on that side of it is outside of talking to people. That's what I want to do, is to help demonstrate that this is a measurable thing, right? And using computer formula and stuff like that, and quantifying fields of behavioral psychology and neuroscience and connecting all these things. We know that, hey, crazy dog. We know that if you take in a certain amount of calories and then you go run a mile, we can measure the amount of calories you burn, right? They've even talked about, we've all seen those memes and stuff where they say like it takes, 20 calories to smile and 50 calories to frown or whatever.
Yeah.
So, calories are units of energy, and I think we may not be able to measure the units themselves like in the brain at the neurochemical level, but we can measure the outcome. And that's essentially what kind of calculus is, as I understand it. is when you're missing a middle part of the equation. You can kind of measure the outcome of something, and you can tell what was going on in the middle.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, this person ate all these things in a given day, and he experienced all these kinds of metaphysical interactions during a given day, and his character set to begin the day was this, and you quantify a dozen different fields maybe, and some circumstantial stuff, and you can tell what his output's going to be in life. And you can start to see that you twiddle the knobs a little bit, starting at the intent, at the level of intent in the mind. And you can start having a dramatic difference on your life. And it's not physical. There's nothing physical about the intent in your mind.
No.
I mean, this is the singularity within self that is irreducible. You can't measure that. Well, where does the intent come from? Sam Harris has Sam Harris, I think, has a little thought experiment, and I love him. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's a brilliant guy, and he's got half the picture. But he says, like, name any movie that you can think of. Just like name one.
Me?
Yeah.
Name
a movie. Any movie.
We'll go Star Wars.
Star Wars, right?
Okay.
So his argument is that you can't explain why you picked Star Wars in a way that explains willpower or free will. You can't explain free will. If I ask you, why did you pick that movie, I can demonstrate to you that you don't have free will. So why did you pick that movie?
Because I just saw one recently, and it's coming up in my thought process more often than any other movie. It's the last movie I saw. So
right.
I don't know. I guess that was the first one that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. So it was the first one that came to mind, but why didn't you instead go, here's the first one that came to mind. I'm not going to pick that one. I'm going to wait a few more seconds and think of 5 more, and I'm going to pick the 4th one. Why didn't you play that game in your head?
I don't know. I guess that seemed like a lot of unnecessary energy to answer a open-ended question. I don't know. Maybe I started to, and then I was like, no.
Yeah.
Just be impulsive. I don't know.
Right, And so
I can't explain.
At the end of it, it's irreducible. You can't explain that.
Yeah.
That's where the self happens. That's where the connection to the all. That's where all of the convergence of all of our inputs in our existence, in our DNA. And everything comes into a singularity, and that's where you can't explain free will. You can't explain intent. We kind of just are. And that's why Sam talks about, it's always now, right? Focus on the moment now and how you feel now, because all you can do is sort of accept what happens to you, make the best decisions you can and free yourself from the stress of worrying about things that may never happen, and at the end of the day, we're all doing the best we can. You take the free will out of life and you realize we're sort of programmed. All we have is our intent and the spiritual experience we allow ourselves to have right now. Anyway, I wandered off on that, but
well, no, I mean, I think what I'm taking from it is really go back to the movies, and why I didn't break down and think of more and then make a decision with a little bit more thought process behind it is because just as of recently, I have learned to quiet my mind in the sense that I've spent a lot of time worrying about hypothetical situations of an upcoming event. It's like, okay, if I think about the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, if it falls somewhere in between, at least I have a game plan. And then like something happens that has nothing to do with anything that you had from worst to best that you could come up with in your mind. And it was a waste of energy. And I would be stressful, anxious, uptight. I, didn't have as much time to just be in the moment that I was in at the time. I was somewhere else scheming, and I've put a lot of energy in my life to overthinking situations. And I think the more that I am in the moment,
right,
the more that I'm on like pace with where I'm at emotional wise, with my happiness level, with my intent of what I'm doing, is am I using the moment I'm in to its maximum potential, I guess, versus let me stay in here and think, which then I would find, all of these negative. So once I got rid of it anyway, the ability to focus, be more creative, be happier, better at work, sleep better, all of that stuff started to kind of come along with it. And I've stuck to it now, and things keep happening in my world that are positive.
Exactly. You're attracting what you're putting out.
Yeah.
And it's like we talked about, and we've had a couple of Instagram lives in the last couple of days where people have asked twice now, when I say, what do we want to talk about, and people say, how to stay positive, how to keep yourself in a positive mindset, or whatever, and that's maybe the most important question you can ask in life. It's certainly one of the most important. You make better decisions.
Oh yeah.
From a positive mindset, right? You're not making a decision from a panicked mindset. You're balanced. You're looking at, here's a negative potential outcome. Here's a positive. Let me weigh that out in a nice measured way. I'm not doing this out of panic and fear. I'm going to think about these things, nice and level-headed. And it all starts with mindfulness, right? I mean, you can't attack negative reactions in your mind and in your subconscious and all that without bringing them to your conscious, becoming conscious of them, right? Being aware. And like I talked about earlier, when I did this exercise myself and started practicing mindfulness every day and trying to, every so often, every time I thought about it, I would just make myself aware of what emotional state I was in, which is to say, what were my spirits at? Like, where were my spirits in that moment? Because that's really where mind, body, and spirit, we talk about that to anyone who doesn't realize. I mean, your mood is your spirit, your attitude, your mood, this is all the same thing. So use whichever term is most
relatable, I guess.
Relatable to you, whatever resonates with you the best. But when you become spiritually aware of your state of spirit, of your mood, emotionally, this is just, psychology. There's nothing woo-woo about this.
No.
And I think that's what the spirit science thing, to bring that again full circle, that's what I like, is that he just presents it saying, look, call it what you want. Mood, spirit, attitude, whatever. But if you think about it like this, check your mind, body, and spirit, call it mood and physical health and mental health, whatever you want to do. And once I became more aware of my mood every day, I realized that the number one emotion by far that I was feeling all the time was frustration with myself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I never would have thought that. That was a weird thing for me. I would wake up late and be frustrated, right? Have something happen at work and I'd be frustrated. Be short and snappy with my kids and be frustrated with myself. Forget my wallet somewhere and be frustrated with myself. And just realized that I walked around every day, all day, frustrated with myself.
Absolutely.
And then getting frustrated with other people. So then I started to realize that if you're getting frustrated with other people, being aware of who those people are and how much importance you're putting on that relationship in your life, that's the next step.
Absolutely.
You have a relationship with your job, and if that's where 70% of your stress is coming from, then you need to have a look at that relationship and decide, do you fight, flight, or fix?
Yeah, I find I see it a lot of people, myself in my own personal life. This is one's relationships with people that cause a whole lot of stress, that might be your sibling or your parent or something like that, that it's harder to just drop all of that and cut it. So then you have to figure out where you're letting all of that negativity in that relationship occupy your brain and going, do I want to waste the energy on it? Or do I want to decide to use that part of my brain? It's almost like an exercise in self-control on how you want to use your thoughts. And do you want to waste time?
Hold on. I want to absorb that. An exercise in self-control in how you use your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, you're right. That's your intent. That's your intent, is your sort of that spotlight inside your brain is kind of how I picture it.
Yeah.
And it's shining a light inside your head at different thoughts and different ideas. And you only have one spotlight, Or it can also, I've also described it as that librarian in your brain that runs and grabs the book that you need.
Absolutely.
And brings it back, and that's why the filing systems in the human brain need to be adequate, because you have a librarian and they're running around grabbing books off the shelf. Amateur.
Sorry.
my ringer's on too. My ringer's totally on.
My phone is now off the table.
Yeah, same.
No, but I love the library in your brain.
That's
fantastic, man. But that's what I've figured out. It's a exercise in self-control in the sense that
how you use your thoughts. Which missions do you send a librarian on?
Me personally.
Well, but that's what it's about, though. That's what you mean. The controlling what you do with your thoughts is essentially the same as just determining which missions you send your librarian on. Which thoughts do you want her to go grab?
I guess I'm sending her less and less on missions and more on where am I right now in the moment. Now, when I'm having a conversation like we are right now, I'm going and getting knowledge and I'm constructing. But if I'm just alone at work, doing my thing, driving down the road, I'm not thinking as much. I'm not going and taking old memories or things that I'm worried about anymore and filling my brain with that.
That's interesting.
I am more or less feeling
It's like
the moment that I'm in.
You're hanging up tapestries in your brain, and it's which tapestries do you hang up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I took down the Five Nights at Freddy's poster out of my kid's room.
Oh yeah.
You know, with all the discussion of mindfulness in the house and filling your head with positive thoughts and all that stuff, my oldest actually was like, "Hey, Dad, can we take that thing down?" You know.
Yeah.
And they loved having it up. But it's which thoughts do you fill your brain with? Do you fill them with positive things, with beautiful things, like sacred geometry, or just nature paintings, things that are natural and beautiful, or even cool positive stuff, your favorite superhero.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do you really want, demonic looking figures or these destroyed, because looking at a beautiful, natural, wholesome image has an impact on the brain. And looking at a picture of a toy with his eyeball ripped out with tears all over his body, I mean, these have repercussions in the spirit.
Oh yeah, and then they become physical. I mean, it's a proven fact. If you walk into a room, the room's solid red, your body temperature will literally rise.
Really?
Your brain says hot.
I didn't know that.
There's whole studies on it.
Oh, I believe you.
I wrote a paper in college on the color yellow and all the effects of that color. We all had a different color. If you walk into a room opposite of that's solid blue, you'll almost feel a little bit cold.
Huh.
Your surroundings, and especially color on the primary level, totally affects your mood. At the daycare, they put in a new tile when I was working there, and it was yellow and red tile, alternating like a checkerboard.
My God.
And the kids went bananas. It was overstimulating. And the behavior in the rooms, there were more activity, more wildness, more rambunctiousness, and they ended up having a consultant come in a year or so later, and the first thing she said was like, "You have got to tone down the color in here.
Wow,
it's way too overstimulating." I mean, it affects us.
Yeah, no, I think it does
on a physical level.
And dude, this was a whole conversation I wanted to have about just now came into mind about the importance of your surroundings, the importance of your surroundings on your spirit. Everything from the colors, which is a big thing, chromotherapy, light therapy, wearing certain colors, putting certain colored sheets on your bed, certain color light bulbs in your house, and what you're saying. I mean, I knew that like in the esoteric circles and stuff, this stuff all is understood, but I didn't. You're saying that scientific studies have been done on that.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit silly for not having heard that, but I appreciate the info. I didn't realize that, but that goes right along with everything that esoteric people say about chromotherapy and stuff.
Yeah.
And aromatherapy being the same way, which is why they put it in every. They don't put it in every spa out there in the world for no reason. The candles and the incense and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, then there's the whole you're the 5 people you surround yourself with. We take on, in so many ways, there's so many little sayings that, what you surround yourself with. Like we talked about earlier, before I could do a piece of art, I had to have a clean, calm setting. If there were dishes in the sink or clothes that need to be folded and stuff, my brain wasn't gonna.
Right.
I needed to be.
It all matters. It all matters. But the importance of architecture, I think, in that when you're talking about your surroundings and colors and all that stuff, the impact they have on the eyes, and arguably even other things that are a lot more woo-woo. But architecture, imagine students today sitting in these square classrooms with square ceiling tiles, square floor tiles, square desks, square whiteboards, square, whatever they have, LED projectors, screens, or whatever.
Yeah. Or they
Square,
all have tablets,
square iPads, and if you understand left and right brain, principles and characteristics and all that, that this is a very male, very left-brained, rigid, straight line, structured sort of setting. It's a very, very, very specific setting. You're encouraging and empowering and exposing these kids to nothing but left-brain, straight line, masculine structure, and no right brain curves, no feminine curves, nothing that sort of encourages the growth of the right brain, which is control of the emotions, control of spirit. And that's why some people say we've lost connection with spirit. I say we've lost connection with our emotions and our ability to handle those things properly. And if you're more spiritual, you can say we've disconnected from spirit. But we've gotten to a point where we all kind of just need to start understanding that when we hear someone talk about spirit, we're talking about their mood, their emotions, and all that. And it comes from the architecture. It comes from the way we build buildings, the way we have, looking chapels and old cathedrals and stuff. And they had like these big, sacred geometry everywhere.
Yeah.
Like a damn Da Vinci painting. Everything was done in the Renaissance was done with sacred geometry. And it encouraged the Enlightenment. I've got an Assassin's Creed poster right there. And there's sacred geometry all in it. And there's domes and round stuff and, towers. We've gotten to the point where we do Manly P. Hall, one of my favorite people in the world, author, old Freemason guy. He talked about it. We've gotten to where we just build the cheapest like cubic structures we can, whether it's skyscrapers. I guess there's some architecturally interesting skyscrapers, but for the most part, office buildings, hospitals, even our homes are pretty squared for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Schools are all very square. The building itself, the roof, most of them are very square. And that's why you end up with what you end up with. That's all I want to do. We can talk more about sacred geometry later. We can do more on music later. This is kind of just to give you guys an idea of some of the rambling that can go on. Your input is appreciated.
Absolutely.
And make sure that you like and subscribe and share. Check us out on the Instagram at shamanic.philosophy and shamanicphilosophy.com. New website as of the filming of this, December 19th. New website coming very, very soon. Check back in a couple weeks, it might be there. Make sure you subscribe, follow on Instagram and all that. Appreciate you guys so much. May the light be with you. May life be within you. May you be a sun on the path of all men. God bless you guys. Have a good week.